While we wait a few more minutes, everyone could be amused, as Dr. Humphrey was earlier, by the copious liquor cabinet behind me, and also by the books of Torah. I find that they go very well together. Spirit meets spirits. And so, thank you for joining us today. We will start in about 30 seconds. While we wait for everyone to find their place digitally and get comfortable, I would very much like to make this a conversation that extends beyond the realm of just Dr. Humphrey and myself speaking. I'm sure a lot of you would have a lot of questions about what Dr. Humphrey will speak about questions that you had about the topics that we will discuss. And so we are all kind of completely familiar, I assume by now, with the machinations of Zoom, spending approximately, 783 hours a week on Zoom in the past year. But we will be taking questions via the Q&A function in the bottom on the bottom of your screen. So kindly, if at any point throughout the conversation, and I will make this announcement again and again, you have any questions for us, please click or submit them via the Q&A and not via the chat, which we will indeed not be monitoring as we speak with one another. It is now 1:02. Dr. Humphrey, we will break a world Jewish record by being the most on time any Jewish event has ever been, and starting only 2 minutes late. And so I'd like to begin with very brief introductions because I'm so excited to be here with Dr. Kathy Humphrey, and I want to jump right in. I am Liel Leibovitz. I am an editor at large at Tablet Magazine and the co-host of the podcast Unorthodox. I am not the reason we are here today. The reason we're here today is Dr. Kathy Humphrey, who is the Senior Vice Chancellor for Engagement and Secretary of the Board of Trustees at the University of Pittsburgh. If I were to read to you her entire bio and all the awards and achievements that she had won, we would be here for a very long time, and I would like to do that some other time. I think it's worth doing, but really one of the most thoughtful, insightful people working in higher education today. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to this conversation Dr. Humphrey. Hello.
Hello, it's nice to be with you, Liel.
It is an absolute pleasure. The topics we have to discuss are many and varied. So let me begin on a very personal note. 2020, which feels like it hasn't ended yet, right? I mean, feels like it will always be in some place 2020. But this tumultuous year came maybe to its kind of apex with the events of the summer when so many Americans of so many walks of life came together to demand that we pay serious attention to systemic racism. I wonder on a truly personal note for you, what was this moment like? Was it a hopeful moment, a terrifying moment, a moment of transformation? What did you feel and think about as you were watching these events unfurl?
So, when you think about what the catalyst was and how we got to the moment, you can't digest the moment without digesting the incidents, right? And being frustrated and concerned that that this new form of acceptable lynching in the street has become the norm, and the concerns that erupts within you as the mother of two Black males, as the wife of a Black male, the concerns that flash across you every time they walk into the night. You have to say a little prayer. And I don't know if you can imagine what that's like to live like that every day. But I lived like that before this incident happened, and I still live like that, even though all of this has transpired. So I start that way so that you have some context about my response, about how do I feel, and about the moment that kind of everybody kind of got jarred to a point of maybe a new reality. And for me, in so many ways, it was gratifying to know that so many people are now not to be too jargonish, but now they're woke. But at the same time, what dawned on me how complicit I had been, that I had been too patient, that I had tried to work a system like everybody else before me has tried to work, and the movement has not been. And so that we haven't made that much progress, or the kind of progress that I would have liked us to have made by now. And so while of course there is a feeling of, okay, there is some sigh of relief that now you might understand where we need to go. Now you might be willing to go where we need to go. Now you do have some labels: anti-racist, anti-Black. You've got some labels to use to maybe help you define the path that we need to go forward. All that is gratifying. We're going to have conversations. Now nonprofit and for-profit organizations are going to say, wait, maybe there's something else that we should be doing to make our world better. That naturally, that was gratifying, to hear people saying, we stand with you. I appreciated it, but also was a little suspect of, what does that mean that you're going to stand with me? And how is that different from before you made the pronouncement that you were going to stay with me? So yes, I would say in some way I was very hopeful that maybe we really are going to turn the page. But remember, every time there's an outbreak, every time someone is murdered in the street and the protest goes off, and we all become very hypersensitive, it goes away. And that was my biggest fear, is that this moment might go away, just like the other moments have gone away, and we might become numb and more dull to the circumstances. Liel, you're on.
Yes, I am. And so let me ask you the question that I think so many of us have been asking ourselves for quite some while, but especially since this summer. And it's exactly the question you just raised. Not only what does it mean to stand with those demanding justice, but also what should it mean? In other words, what does this concept of allyship look like? If you could share your definition of what being a good ally might be like.
Yeah. So I think it's very difficult to stand with someone if you don't really know them. And I think the first step that everybody has to take on all sides of this equation, all sides, and I see all of us a part of the equation, is that first we have to get in relationship with. And because Liel, it is the relationship that makes me human. Because otherwise, I'm just a Black woman. I'm just an African-American woman, right? Walking down the street with carrying the load of all the stereotypical information that is typically assigned to me up on site, right? And you know what that's like as a member of the Jewish community. You know what it's like to hold the bag of stereotypes, right? And so the reality for me is true allyship starts with really saying more than what you say, but what you do. And the first step of that is, I get to know you. I get to know you at a different kind of level, at a level where we feel not only at the point of acknowledgement, but we have a connection. We have a understanding to the point where I am able to speak on your behalf. I am able to unpack the stereotypes that come across my path about you, and I am able to help the person who is using them to operate to rethink their position. That's real allyship. When I can create a different and real human connection that helps you understand that what you think is true is not, or what needs to happen. I have the urgency behind it because you are now a part of me. It's different. And I don't care all the other little things that you'll talk about that you want to do and that you want to say. The bottom line, the foundation of allyship is that ship, that relationship, right? If you don't get on that ship of relationship, you can't be a real ally. You can't understand, you can't know until you have sat and talked with me, until you understand from my perspective, until I understand from your perspective. I'll give you an idea, I'll give you an example. So the Weinsteins, who you know, I am very connected to them. They've reached out to me and I have reached back to them. And I feel like they are a part of me, right? And because of that, when I hear somebody say something that I think is crazy about Hasidic Jews, I'm the first one to speak up. They're not there because guess what? People are not going to say those crazy things in front of them, right? But they will me, right? And so I have the obligation to unpack the stereotype and try to help bring them to another place so that they really get to know people who I feel connected to. If they were just people who ran the Chabad house in Pittsburgh, I would not run to their rescue, but they are not. They are people that I care about. And because I care about them, I am not going to allow certain things to happen in my space, in my place. I am courageous enough. I'm bold enough to stand up on their behalf. And that's what I need. And that's what I mean when you stand with me, that you're willing, that you are courageous, that you are bold enough, that you will stand in place of me.
Amen, Selah to that. This inspires me to kind of digress a little bit. So we're here under the auspices of this wonderful book, Social Vision, which really is a kind of a wonderfully radical reimagination of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And there's a little tidbit in the book that I thought about as I listened to you speak, in which it's a speech that or a teaching that the Rebbe gave, I believe, in 1981, in which he said, "Look, it's no coincidence that the first letter in the Bible is the letter Bet, because it's also the first letter of the word bracha, or blessing. And if you think that giving a blessing is just God's job, or just a rabbi or a priest or a pastor's job, you're wrong. It is our job to bless one another. It is our job to care for one another. It's our job to complete one another. And this is very much the vibe that I got from you. But I want to kind of, be a little bit difficult here and say, here we are at this very divisive and divided moment in our nation. And it seems that everyone has a really easy time seeing themselves as a member of this tribe or that tribe, this camp or that camp, this party or that party. And for some reason, a really difficult time seeing themselves exactly like you said. No, it's the relationship between humans, between people, the connection that is immediate. So as an educator, how do we make that happen? How do we get people to see people, to connect and bless each other?
Mm-hmm. So I think that, everything that has happened, especially this summer, that has erupted the resurgence or the existence of the racial pandemic, has helped us to see that our human connection has been disconnected. Our ability to do certain things just cannot happen if you really see the humanity in all of us. And that the humanity supersedes my pigment, the groups that I belong to, my ethnic connections, my cultural connections, but my humanity is what makes you and me relatives, right? And somewhere that has been lost. And and I'm not sure it's been lost. I'm not sure we ever created it. If you think about how this country came into being, right? If you think about, every time I would hear that slogan, "Make America Great Again," I would think, so when was that? Because when was that has a lot to do with where I am in that equation, right?
Right.
And what people who look like me were doing, and that's a little frightful, right? When we hear that, but I think it happens one person at a time, and I think it happens not. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I really think it has to do with children. And I think I love that there is a poster and with a little black boy and a little white boy, and they are hugging. And on the poster, it says, "Nobody's born a bigot." Right? They have to go through this, what we call a cycle of oppression, right? They're born, and then after they're born, what happens is they get socialized. And that socialization process begins to tell you who you love and who you don't love, who you value and who you don't value. And you pick that up from everywhere, from the media, from magazines, from books, from what you don't see and what you do see. You pick up who is valuable. And we have reduced humans to being valuable and not valuable. And it happens so early in life with the children, right? Till we move to people who we trust, who solidify that stereotype, who solidify that socialization to say, yes, this is right, yes, that is wrong. And not by what they necessarily say, how they act. So for example, I always say I always notice when I go to an event that I'm the only African American there. And I think, what's this say? What does it say that I'm the only African American at this event, right? How can that be? And that is teaching children what to value and what to value, just in who shows up at your house for dinner and who doesn't show up to your house, who you're connected to and who you're not connected to. These are all lessons that we're teaching our children. If we really want to take care of this, we'll start at one, who we allow, who we don't allow to be connected to us, to be in our presence, to be worthy of our care, to be worthy of our love.
And so I want to talk about a moment of connecting and allowing love and care in a very difficult time. 2 years ago, after the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh, you were seminal in really helping the Jewish community and campus grieve, feel safe, protected, and I don't think it's a stretch to say loved. I was wondering if you could share some recollections from these very difficult times, and how the university community under your leadership sort of came together in this way, because I think it's really a moment, and I've heard this from other people as well. It's really a kind of inspirational moment from which we could all learn.
So I remember getting a text that there was a problem at the Tree of Life. And then I remember getting a call from the chancellor asking all the senior leaders of the university to come into the office. As you remember, it was a Saturday morning. And I got that call, and I ran to the office. And of course, on my mind is, where are my friends? Where are my friends? And I gotta imagine that everybody felt that way at that moment. And as we are talking about what has happened, we don't know a lot at that point. But as we began to talk about what actions we were going to take, I said to the chancellor, I will go to the Chabad house and to Hillel and check on and make sure that that those who are connected to us, we know how they're doing and we know if they need anything. And our dean of students went to one house. I went to the Weinsteins, and then I went over to check to see that they were okay, and they were, and thank God they were okay. And then later that night, um, earlier that day, we mobilized counselors to come. It was Parents Weekend for us, actually. So we had parents on campus in addition to our students that we had to be concerned about. And you can imagine, these are young people. They are scared. They are afraid. Everything that you can conjure up in your mind is going on in their minds right now. And you're concerned about them, right? Because what do you say, right? And so I got a call from Shmuley, and he asked if I would come, and I believe it was Havdalah at that point. I think that was the service, and he asked me if I would come and say a few words, and I always say yes. That's how I got here right now. I always say yes, right? And to them, and I said yes, and then I looked at my husband and I said, I don't know what to say. And I have rarely at that point in my life, but that was a moment that I was so taken aback at the ugliness, at the cruelness, at what had happened to our community. Our community was broken at that point. We were living in still somewhat of a shock and still, I'll be honest with you, fear, because you don't know, is this the end? Is the beginning? What's going to go on? What's happening? And so I remember riding to the event and just overwhelmed by what we had endured. And what could I say that would strengthen these young people? What could I be? What could I do in the face of all this hate? What can you possibly say? Can you say it's going to be all right? You really can't say it's going to be all right, because ugliness is out there, and it's still raining, and you don't know when it's going to happen again. And I remember walking forward, and I remember trying to literally say words that I thought would almost put my arms around them to say, we're going to get through this, but only together. And I am still, it's still tough for me, even today, to think that we have endured that, and that we really don't have any real guarantees that it won't happen again, that it's a part of, unfortunately, the existence that we live in. But I will tell you, we decided to have our own service at the university, and we had our students created T-shirts that said, "Pitt is stronger than hate." And I remember one of the rabbis talked about, because the Star of David was on it, and he said, he explained to us that it wasn't a star, that indeed this was a shield. And that for me was so powerful, because it will take all of us to shield ourselves from this kind of hate. Actually, the African-American students are creating a similar shirt for their vigil, which we haven't been able to have yet because of COVID, but it says "Tired of Hate" on their shirt. And I think both of them are so truth, right, for us. But to see thousands, and I will tell you, probably close to 5,000 students gathered together to demonstrate their commitment and our connection to one another at that point, and to assure that there are so many more with you.
That is so beautiful, and I hope this rally is made possible soonest. Let me sort of shift gears a little bit and ask questions that are not as personal in nature, but kind of try to find a way into or towards something that is a solution, which is maybe a little bit of a ridiculous term, as the problems that we face, as you so accurately said, are so overwhelming and so ingrained that thinking about it just in the terms of like, oh, there's a little easy fix, that's obviously not the way. But we recently welcomed a new administration, one that promises to pay much more attention to these pressing issues of inequality. Um, Suppose you were tapped by President Biden to lead a task force that would, at the very least, make American institutions and public life more equitable, more just, more mindful of these questions and issues that we have discussed. Um, what are some directions you'd suggest we explore, prioritize, invest in?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I think that when we think about these topics and we say to people, all right, we want to be a more anti-racist place. We want to be a more sensitive, inclusive of all kinds of people. When we say that, I don't think there is a real knowledge about what we are really saying. How do we get at the systemic systems? And so if I were tapped, I would say, okay, President Biden, we really have to help people understand, first of all, the systemic systems that have held us captive in place. And so we've got to get people trained, number one, to go into organizations, into for-profits, nonprofits, and to really help them, first of all, see who they are. And once you can see who you are and acknowledge who you are and acknowledge the systemic racism and the systemic other isms that you work with every single day as normal, it is only then where we will begin to turn a corner. It is only then where we'll really understand what it means to stand with. And so for example, one of the things that I'm working on right now at Pitt is just that. I've created with a team of folks a dashboard that literally shows us who we are in the area of race, race and gender, mainly. Right now, we're looking at some other cultural aspects to create that dashboard as well. And what we're doing is saying, who are we? So we say we want to be inclusive. How did we spend our money? What percentage of our resources, of our buying power, did we spend with women and minorities? And we've put that on the website. All can see it. Because the first thing you've got to do is you've got to acknowledge, this is who I am. This is what I don't do right now. Then I said, okay, how many African Americans work at this university? How many women work at this university, right? How many people who are different work at this university? Let's look at it. And let's say, is this where we want to be? Does this represent who we say we are? And if it isn't, what's our game plan? Because before you know who you are, you can't develop a way forward. And so I think that what I would be doing is I would say we need to create people who are experts that we can send in and really help people see who they are, first of all, and then help them to create a strategy to become who they want to be. And I think that's really important because it doesn't matter what I want you to be. What matters is, who do you want to be? Who do you say that you are? And then let's make sure that you can put together a strategy that helps you become who you want to be.
I think that's brilliant. That's also very much in line, of course, with the Rebbe's teaching, this notion of constantly being cognizant of the power that you have to change, and all of us helping to empower that. And so I want to take a sort of digression and pick one question from that we received from the audience because it seemed to connect so well. The Rebbe famously, and I think this book does it a lot of justice, taught us to kind of connect to our positive side, our positive energy, and yet seeing so much oppression and so much bigotry, and really scary, ugly. You use the word ugly. I think it's a perfect word. Um, a lot of us feel angry, really
Mhm.
angry all the time. And so the question that we received from Melissa Coletti is, should we all be angry? How can we overcome this kind of sense that we just can't get over how infuriating so much of what we're seeing is?
Mhm.
And how could we reconnect to that positive, constructive, loving energy that would help us build the thing that we want to see?
You know, there is a scripture in Psalms that says, I would have lost hope had I not seen the righteous, had I not seen the goodness of the Lord. And I I think because I see some glimmers of hope, I can't lose hope. And I think that's the one thing we have to do. In the midst of all this, we've got to believe that the glimmers that we see could be our true reality. And, nothing great happens unless we make a decision. I think that is the connection that you made with the Rebbe is so absolutely wonderful. Nothing changes unless I can see it, unless I believe it, unless I'm willing to stand on it and speak it. Nothing changes. And I think that we can definitely make up in our minds that it's going to be a different world. Otherwise, we are going to be consumed with hate. We are going to be consumed with anger, and if not hate, especially anger. I mean, Liel, the things that happen to me on a routine basis, I should be the maddest woman on the planet, right? Because of just my lived experiences. Oftentimes when I'll say X, Y, or Z happened to me, and people will be like, "Oh, wow!" And I will think, "No, that happens to me regularly, right? I don't just get to go to a car dealership and buy a car without some nonsense. Most of the time when I go, there is an assumption that I cannot afford the car. That's just a given. I can't afford the car. I'm wasting their time. I have bad credit. That's just the assumption that I walk into the door with. I can't escape it no matter how I want. So much so that once I had filled out an application, credit application for a car, and they came back to me and they said, ma'am, we need to know how much you make a month, not how much you make a year. And I was stunned. First of all, you don't think I am intelligent enough to know the difference between monthly and annually. All of that, just, I could just be mad. But the reality is, because I know so many wonderful people who are not like that, it gives me hope to keep fighting. It gives me courage to keep loving in spite of it. And if indeed we are determined to keep going in the right direction of loving our neighbors as ourselves, which I think is a tall order, right? Because I'm willing to forgive me a million times. I'm willing to forgive me over and over again. I've got to have the same charity for my neighbor, even the ones who do things that I think are horrific. I've got to be able to say, I might be able to impact them differently if I don't give up, if I don't stop, if I don't give them an opportunity to become a better person because of the impact that I make in their lives. The danger is that I also don't want to become an anomaly in their lives. We know one Black woman who's good,
Right.
right? I want you to understand that I am the norm.
So educationally speaking, I mean, as an educator, how do you I mean, this is so wonderful and so true and so inspiring, but I wonder from a sort of practical educational perspective, how do we go about making sure that young people, and I love that you brought up the poster because I think it's entirely it's fundamentally, profoundly true. How do we go about making sure that young people receive the kind of education where they have not just the opportunity but the incentive to see this, to open up, to connect, to remain what they were born, rather than succumb to this systemic bigotry that impacts so many of us?
Well, I think we've done something great just recently with this election. To elect a African American Asian woman as the vice president of the United States screams to our young people, you can do and be whatever you want to be. But it also says something else. It says all people are valuable and you're worth it. And I think it starts there, that we help all young people know that they're valuable. But here's why I'm so committed to the young people piece. My parents were amazing. When I think about that last question you asked me about hate, my parents were really, really good in that they helped me understand at a very early age that all white people were not bad. My parents taught me that. Yes, some of them do bad things, but they're not all bad, right? And my parents, the biggest crime you could do in my house is to make fun of somebody because they were different. My parents, they just weren't having it. That you didn't do, and I think we've got to get to that with our young people as well. But with the age that we work with and on a college campus, what I think is we still have to do is a lot of exposure work. The last thing we want is for our graduates to leave our university without enough exposure to differences that they really have a commitment to it. And that becomes because of where I place you, what I ask you to learn about, what I ask you to know about. Right now, we got some flack about this actually, but we got a lot more positive, a lot more light about it. We created a course on anti-racist racism, and we asked all the freshmen to take the course. Why? Not because we're trying to teach them how to think about a certain topic. What we're trying to do is expose them to knowledge that will help them make really good decisions about their own value systems. We don't tell our college students what to value. What we do is say, you've come to us with a set of values. We want you to bounce those values up against some information and make sure that the value that you have, you are flat-footedly there, and that is where you really want to stand, because you have all the information, all the data to really solidify where you're standing. And if we can get you graduated with have truly examined who you are and who you want to be, that's a success.
How worried are you about the sort of bubbling malevolence that comes to us via new communication and technology platforms? Because so much of the story of the last 4 years has been about hateful people gathering on platforms like Gab, like Parlor, having these conversations that are the opposite of education, the opposite of information, and also the opposite of this interpersonal relationship that you mentioned. They're just kind of like very effective tools to help hate fester. How concerned are you about this? And again, as an educator and as someone who cares deeply and thinks deeply about these topics, is there anything we should be doing that we're not doing to combat the use of technology as tools for spreading hate?
So I think we all need to be concerned about this, right? The recent incidents with how a momentum is built through technology is a concern. But here's what I think we're not doing a good job, that we have to start doing a good job at, and that is, we all have to start speaking back to hate. If we don't speak back to it, then it gets to just stand. And we have an obligation to speak back at, they have a right and a freedom to say what they believe is good and right. But if we don't counter it, if we just let it stay in the atmosphere, if we are complicit in this fight because we are too lazy or not knowledgeable enough to know how to respond to it, then it gets to live. And we have some obligation to speak to it in a way that we can kill some of that hateful speech.
I I dearly hope that we would find this courage. We received another question on the Q&A, and now as a reminder, anyone who wishes to submit a question via the Q&A function, please do. This one is about the historical relationship between African American and American Jews. How do you see this relationship as sort of, academically and personally? I mean, we have had certainly strong ties. We've had bitter divides. And it seems like the last 4 years are sort of kind of rewriting this history a little bit. What is your perspective on it?
So, when I got a copy of the book that you all are taking a look at with the Rebbe, and
I will hold it up for everyone's
yes,
benefit.
I picked up the book initially, and I didn't notice initially that it was all African Americans in the background. And when I picked it up initially, I just didn't notice it. I just assumed they were all white people. And then I picked up the book again, and I thought, those are all African Americans in the background, right? And then it was a reminder to me of how much we have relied upon each other to manage the world, right? I have some great indebtedness to the Jewish community because of how many Jewish people fought right alongside those who marched for civil rights. And the reality is that we all have to come to the realization. I think, King says, injustice anywhere promotes injustice everywhere. And I love that poem by Peter Niemöller, who says, they first came for the communists and I didn't speak up. Then they came for the Jews and I didn't speak up. Then they came for the Catholics and I was Protestant, so I didn't speak up. And then they came for me. And by that time, there was no one left to speak up. And I think that's a crucial component of it. It's like, nobody knows who's going to sit in the seat of the one who is oppressed. And if we don't speak up when we see any group being oppressed, we just make room for that seat for the people who are like us to sit in, and there be no care, no methodology of how we treat or how we care for. So I think the relationship between Jews and African Americans, I wish could be stronger and even tighter, because we have a very history that has a lot of parity in it. And when I was walking through the Holocaust Museum when I was in Israel with the Weinsteins and the Silvermans, I was amazed at how much parity there was between African Americans, the lynchings, how Jews were just treated as a people in so many ways that should give us a great passion for each other's plights, and should help us to work harder on each other's behalf, and through that connection. But the reality is, anybody who sits in the seat of the press, it should be our responsibility to speak up.
So I want to conclude our conversation with two questions that hopefully steer us in the right direction. One cerebral, the other much more emotional. the cerebral one first. And so if we were looking, and I admit this is a profoundly unfair question because it is so huge, but I'm going to inflict it on you anyway. If we were looking at what you believe to be the most pressing civil rights issues of our time, specific fronts that are more urgent than any other uh, form of injustice that we have to address right now, put on top of our priority list, do some come to mind, or is that the wrong way to look at it because it is too much of an intricate web of interdependent inequities?
Oh, so there is so much to this, right? You're right, it's huge. But there are a couple things that come to mind, and I'm going to share them, not meaning that they are the only things. I want to be clear about that, or the even maybe the most important things, but some things that I think we've got to get our hands around. And the one is our criminal justice system. We have to figure out how to write it. I don't think disbanding it is the answer. I don't think even defunding it is the answer. But I think we've got to get our criminal justice system situated so that it does what it was initially created to do, protect and to serve. We've got to stop training them to be in a military fashion and start training them to protect and serve humans, to be guardians of our communities, of our people, and we've got to change the dialogue there. Number one, we've got to change who ends up in prison and what they end up in prison for, because that is a part of the breakdown of the family structure as well. So we've got to take a look at those systems. We've got to figure out how we're going to help families stay together. And how we're going to support families in their desire to be a family. You know, it's the one thing that I love about the Jewish community is the value of family. And I often think on Saturday mornings about how my Jewish friends don't have a TV on right now, aren't on the phone right now. They are talking to each other, or they are sitting close by each other, or they're taking a walk with their family. This reconnection of the family, this taking a break from the world and making sure our families are glued tightly together, I think is at the root of some of the problems that we are facing. The fact that we still have something called poor schools is a real issue. We shouldn't, at this point in our history, we shouldn't have a concept called failing schools. That just should not exist. We have to get our hands around how we educate our youngs, how we create better, stronger citizens, and how those stronger citizens help us create the better world. Until we do that, we're going to be where we are. We've got to solidify and place a foundation under the family. We've got to really educate our children, and we've got to help our children to understand the importance of humanity in a way that it really makes us the United States of America.
I'm almost tempted to say, you know, what could possibly top that? But we have just a few more minutes, and I want you to conclude on an even more hopeful note and give us maybe just one example, one thing, one incident, one policy, one idea, one observation that you came across recently that gives you, because we would be completely remiss in the conference that is largely about the legacy of the Rebbe if we didn't end on a very hopeful note. So one thing that gives you just a little bit more hope that these immense tasks that we have discussed, that these immense challenges that you have so aptly detailed, are things that together, as you said just now, united, we could face.
I think the very fact that we're sitting here having this real conversation, the very fact that, you know, we're willing to entertain questions about where can we go, is really where our hope is going to come from. And this notion of, you know, are we really in it to win it? Because if we're in it to win it, we can lick this. We can put 400 years of injustice behind us, and we can go forward if we're willing to make the kind of investments. But we can't be selfish, and we've got to be giving, and we've got to do exactly what the Rebbe says do, and that is to love my neighbor as I love myself.
I'd like, on that very hopeful note, to thank the Social Vision Conferences, Menachem Schmidt, the Weinsteins, Philip Wexler, everyone who has had anything to do with this crucially important, especially at this moment of time, conferences. But more than anything, Dr. Humphrey, I want to thank you, not just for this inspired conversation that, as I hope you could tell by the big smile plastered on my face, will accelerate me for a long time to come, but for everything that you do every single day. So as the Rebbe said in that talk we mentioned, God bless.
God bless. It was great to be with you all, and thank you for this opportunity to share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leibovitz, Dr. Humphrey. We will be reconvening in just 10 minutes at 2 p.m. for a conversation on Hasidic feminism on the same Zoom link. We hope you can join us for that. We'll stop the live stream for now. We'll see you all soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.